everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snider, and we got Alexander Ramsey McCaig with us again today. The Billy Meier expert, should I say that? Can I say that?
I don't know. I think the only person that could actually coin that is probably Billy himself. I'm well read in it. We can say that, Mark.
Yeah, I shouldn't put that word expert on you. I think that's sometimes a bad thing to say about anybody, and then you got unrealistic expectations flying all over the place.
Yeah, Mark, what do you want from me?
Exactly. Perfection. Only perfection.
I'll give you what I can. Yeah.
I want to again remind people to make a donation if you can. If you go to Revolution Radio, there are 4 places where you can make donations, and that can come in handy. Since this is about the only place we talk, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, like right now you're running with your camera on, and I'm running with the camera off. And it creates, when the recording of the show comes, we'll create an MP3, which is about 2 gigabytes.
Sure.
And I don't know how big it would be as an MP4, but if I turned on my camera, then in theory, I guess we would get an MP4. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'd say that you'd probably do 20x the amount of
20 times the size.
20 times the file size, I'd say.
Yeah, and then we'd have to figure out a creative way to get that file up to BitChute. I'd have to split it 20 times or something. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do here, but my software, which records, you know how it goes with software.
Oh, yeah.
They build something great, and it works great, and then they want all these enhancements, and they put all these enhancements on it, and inevitably they'll break something very important, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I'm losing the clarity on the low end of anyone that speaks with a lower voice is going to sound like mush, is what's happening now.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, but it's only in my software where I do my recording. Whatever they're using here is still working great.
That's great.
So if we go get the archive, we're good. But I can't make my little special clips for BitChute like I used to. So
we got to figure that out, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. Technology to me is, as I've gotten older, it's more and more annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way at all? Or
yeah,
not?
Of course. There's there's a whole market that has been created, Mark, of people creating new tech and software and then going out and begging for money so that they can scale that up. And then there's this competition of people making tons and tons of things rather than making one incredibly useful utilitarian thing that's beneficial for all, and then just grabbing everybody to focus their collective efforts on that. We don't do that here. This whole stupid idea of competition currently takes the reign.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm a total believer in open source.
Sure.
Let them take it. Let them make it better. Maybe I can steal some of their stuff later,
Yeah, go make it work.
Make it work. Exactly. That's the way to make. Well, think about it. When did we have open source? When they built airplanes. Remember Orville and Wilbur? They talked to other people about what worked and what didn't work. And that's why we went up so quick with airplanes. We advanced so quickly. By the time World War II came along, we could fly at 450 miles an hour with a prop. And then eventually they created the first jet, the Nazis did, with the Me-262. So if we would open things up and share, but no, we've got to compete all the time.
Yeah, forget that, Mark. Let's compete. Come on.
Please rant for me a little bit on this idea of
open sourcing?
Of open sourcing and this competition and how competition can hurt.
So I own a technology company. That's what I do. That's my day job. And when I say day, it's my day and night job. And with that, we write a lot of code, and we create a tech that's very utility driven for people to take all the data that they generate online, consumers, and vault that data securely in a data vault. And when a big company wants it from them, they have to request from Mark whatever that piece of data may be. Like, hey, Mark, I want you to share some of your healthcare record with me, and I'll pay you $50 for doing so. Well, that's what our technology does. It facilitates that transaction and making your data secure. So in this world of companies that create technology, the whole idea of competition gets exacerbated by this idea of venture capital funding, where people are saying, okay, I got this next best technology. Look how many people I have using it. I know it's almost 99% of the same thing that somebody else has made, but I'm 1% better at getting more people to use my tech. So you should give me more money. And now there's this resource draw that happens, begging for attention to then lift up technology that isn't actually lifting up people. And it's not a beneficial cause. And so what that does is you separate or silo the what I would say is the brain power and also resources that could be necessary if many people came together towards one common goal of creating something. And you see this now with open sourced AI projects where people work on these things online together to create something that's better than what is currently available through like Gemini or ChatGTP.
Like Git.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Git?
Yeah, correct. So you take elements of that nature and you combine it and it's like, oh, wow, the collective power, the collective consciousness power has the ability to accelerate the development of something and catch up to a technology that has been around for X amount of years, that has spent all this time sucking all the resources into itself, but not really opening up the parade of development. But in order to do so, you also have to have specific rules or procedures in place so that when the public comes to help design something, there's limitations around what can be designed or how it is designed. They can all participate, they can all get creative with it, but you can't just, in the full sense of it now, because we're not developed enough in our consciousness to say that, oh, I'm just going to work on this and truly make it better for all. Sometimes people use it and then do, albeit negative things with it or actually make it worse off. So there's a trade-off that happens when you open source those elements.
So how many people are in your company right now?
I have 8 people that work for me, and we have 2 million people that use my system all over the world.
No crap. That is awesome, man.
Yeah, pretty cool. And it'll continue to grow on its own accord, and we should be pretty large by the end of this year. I mean, you're going to see us far and wide. You'll recognize the name.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, but there used to be these source control packages like I think SVN and SourceSafe and all that stuff was terrible before Git came around and provided a real open source
essentially
source control.
Yeah, it's like a repository for everyone to participate in. Yeah.
Repository. It's awesome. This is getting a little spooky.
What is?
Because we're in the same business, or kind of, so to speak. And this is really interesting. And you're in the air flying. You're a real pilot, though. I never finished.
I like flying. Yeah, well, listen, Mark. What's there to finish? You get your license, yeah, but then it's a perpetual learning and hours that occur. It doesn't stop.
Yeah. Right.
Learning never stops, Mark.
Well, don't I know?
Yeah.
There's so much to learn. And then you're, of course, into the guitar now, too.
Oh, yeah. Love playing guitar.
Nylon string, even.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
See, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
The world is an interesting place sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where are we going to start? We're going to start in the book of Hebrews.
Oh, go for it. Listen, you're pulling from my favorite piece of literature.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
Go for it.
You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, blast. To such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word would be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. So the question that I have is, are these people seeing something extraterrestrial, or are they seeing something else? What do you think? I mean,
sounds made up.
You think it's a made-up story?
Yeah, here's why I share that.
Okay.
Anybody who's in the business of instilling fear to control people usually does it with a made-up story. You see it with dictators. You've seen it with the National Socialist Party in Germany. You see this everywhere. It's a great control mechanism. In these states of fear, if you start to record it and say that there was a story that occurred and maybe only 20 people were actually looking around watching this thing happen, you can inflate it, conflate it, deflate it. You could do anything you wanted because you're the one writing it down. But for the context of this, there's this giant mountain, right? I've never read this passage. It's my first time hearing it.
Okay.
And something's burning, and Moses is a part of this. And if animals go near it, they turn to stone.
They say they must stone animals that touch the mountain.
Anybody, here's why I tell you this. This is such a nonsensical passage. Anybody who feels that life must be ended because it has trespassed in a specific area has no respect for life and no respect for the laws which allow life to exist. So in and of that, this whole thing sounds like a fallacy. Now, say you were an extraterrestrial, Mark. You were super advanced, but you were negatively oriented. Would you be wasting your time turning goats to stone when they walked up to a mountain?
They would stone the goat.
They'd stone the goat. You're telling me someone millions of years advanced would go pick up a rock on the ground and they'd take a locomotive function with their arm to throw a stone, right?
Well, didn't the Giza intelligence do some stuff like this though as well?
Well, their whole purpose was to sit down and send telepathic impulses out to people and have people control themselves.
Oh, telenotic. Yeah, I remember that. That's correct.
There's a very specific instance here with what you're talking about, Mark.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If somebody's going to send an impulse, okay, that would be negative, that would, say, in a sense, characteristically cause someone to do something they wouldn't otherwise do, what happens is an opportunity has to exist in the thought patterns of that individual, which they are sending these telepathic impulses to. So you're having a great day, and then all of a sudden, you get a little pissed because something happened. I don't know. You stub your toe, or someone says something to you that you maybe disagree with a little bit, okay? Right. In the normal sense, assuming that no one else is applying telepathic impulse pressures upon you, you would be able to resolve this in your mind and maybe get over that emotional stint in 5 minutes, if not sooner, okay? Depending on how much control you have over your emotions. Now, if these impulses are hitting at the moment when you do this, say, toe stub, they can continue to push you down a very negative spiraling path, and those impulses would cause you to do things you otherwise absolutely would not do. It could exacerbate the situation. It could make the emotions flare up even further. So,
are you saying this could have been the Giza intelligences doing this?
It could. They could have had absolute influence over the people that were writing the book, but they weren't the ones physically writing the book. It's waiting for an opportunity when somebody else is doing something. Now, when intelligences are really advanced, in some senses, they still have to respect your free will, because they know that there's power in that respect, but still using you as a pawn through their own influence, it takes away really no energy from them. So let me operate in my normal, but essentially nudge me in directions or have me do things or think certain ways that I otherwise normally would not do. And it takes no energy away from this bad person sending out these bad impulses. It's the most effective way to manipulate people when you talk about things like those Giza intelligences that were removed from the planet by the Playaran, 40, 50 years ago. Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. In the 70s.
In the 70s, okay?
Which was a really good time, by the way. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I don't know how much pot you were smoking in the 70s, Mark, but it had to have been a lot.
No, none. I was always this strange. I didn't need any pot. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I derailed you there.
No, it's okay. It's totally fine. With passages like this, Mark, when you go to read something, do you find this beneficial to yourself if it's teaching you an instilled state of fear, or saying that there is some almighty God that sits around, inflaming this mountain and then forcing people to stone animals? No one would ever do that. Why would a god supposedly create you just so you could sit around and then kill yourself or kill other things, which are all a part of its own creation? It doesn't make any sense. It's just an absolute, it's an illogical mess, that whole process.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I think it says that.
The fear,
the
fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, I think that's in Proverbs. I just throw that out there to just, I'm a strange guy in a lot of reasons, in a lot of ways. Like, I'm Christian, but I don't mind listening to what you're saying at all. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't. I think it's a legitimate thing to talk about.
Oh, it totally is.
I mean, what about the passages in the Old Testament where they go and they kill every person and every animal, and where they're taking the land?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really bizarre, man. That is really way out there,
Yeah, it's totally bizarre. Listen, it's hard for me to follow something where people sent children on crusades.
Oh, you know what else?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Give me some examples.
That I was telling you about. They could take the virgins for themselves.
Perfect. What a setup. Like that religion was probably calling everybody over at the time.
But I'm not really. I'm just telling you what's in the book.
No, I know. I know that you're only reading what they wrote. You didn't write it, Mark.
Exactly. I'm not trying to discredit the Bible either. I'm just reading what is written in there.
No, that's fine.
So I think it's good for us to have these discussions because
absolutely
you can compare, the Bible. You can compare what the Meier people say. Are you familiar? Do you know Solon? Do you know him?
No.
He's a real big Meier guy. Go out and try to find him on YouTube. He puts together, the natural reader software, and he'll take a.
Oh yeah, he takes the contact reports and puts them into verbal translations. Yes, I know.
He's been doing really good work lately with that. That stuff is, and he just did one on creation.
Awesome.
It was profound. It was really, really profound. So maybe I can play some of those later.
I think that'd probably be a good idea.
I think that would be good. Anyway, okay. Do you have the Might of Thoughts with you? Is it something you can?
I don't, but if you read a passage, I have very good concentration and memory, so I'll know what you said, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, I'm going to read something here. This was smacking me hard today. It says, the law of adaptation of all things to each other. Two laws which have their validity everywhere. That which the human being thinks he makes real, and that which the human being thinks about himself he becomes. I went through this past few days where I'm kind of angry with myself.
How come, Mark? What's going on?
Well, I don't know that I want to go down that path right now. I'm kind of disappointed in myself for, different things. But,
okay.
But you have to be real careful in that state because that which the human thinks about himself, he becomes. Whoa.
So,
think about that one.
Yeah. Have you ever seen how a seed grows, Mark?
Yeah,
Sure. Walk me through it. Okay.
No.
You want me to give the whole thing away, or
why don't you do it?
Why not?
I think that'd be better. Yeah.
Okay.
Since you're prepared for that.
Seeds are relatively dormant things. They can sit around for a very long time, right? And everything a seed needs to develop sits internally within that seed. All it needs is an outside energy catalyst to get this thing to sprout. And then all the material, all of the power, all of the might within it will then develop outward. Okay, so out of a seed, you'll have a mustard plant or roses or anything of the sort. I don't care, you name it. Now, a human being, say for instance, goes around about its day, aka Mark. Mark makes a mistake because he's just mindlessly taking actions around his house and then realizes that this
shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So once Mark gets into the oh shit phase of this, this is the external catalyst, which is going to come in, and Mark has all of these thoughts. He has everything he needs internally to either develop his next action or develop his next set of thought patterns. Okay? So it's now up to Mark to ask himself, with what is going on, how do I want to think about this event? Because how I think about it is going to develop myself on the outside, how I'm then going to react to the environment, what my blood pressure is going to be like in my body, all of those different key things. But it is completely beholden on the power of my own internal thoughts in reaction to a catalyst from the outside, but I have all this might internally. And if I don't direct it properly, there's going to be this projection of Mark that one, Mark doesn't like, and two, other people don't like that Mark is interacting with.
Well said.
Okay.
Well said. Let me read a little bit about what Billy says about seeds or activities going to seed. He says, idleness, this is really interesting. Idleness does not only contribute to the human being going to seed, and I guess going to seed is like a saying, like if you're going, so we'll continue. It's like a state, some kind of state that you get in. Mm-hmm. Idleness does not only contribute to the human beings going to seed, but also irrevocably to decrepitude in the later years or in the life of leisure after going into retirement.
Yep.
This is so critical. If you're retired, you got to be a professional at keeping yourself working on things, or you're going to go into, what did he call it, decrepitude?
Decrepitude. Think of it like living inside of a swamp, festering, anaerobic, dying internally. It's the same thing that cancer likes to do inside the body, right? After certain elements calcify and acids build up and things have weird oxidation levels and then mitosis of cells at some egregious rate because of a genetic malfunction. All those things will occur. But here's the key here, Mark. Going to seed. What do seeds do? Like I said before, they're dormant, right? Inactive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I will share with you, there's a law of brazen cosmic regularity, okay? And that is the law of motion. Everything in this temporal and spatial existence with you and I, Mark, that we experience as real is constantly in motion. The sound waves, my thought patterns, the chemical biological movement within my body itself, the air in this studio room, which I am talking in, the electricity flowing through these lines, the time itself, the planet we are on in translational movement, everything is in a constant state of motion. So, if a human being goes to make a choice that makes them, one, inactive, which is completely counterintuitive to what creation wants you to do, that is to move, that is to interact with more things and learn more, right? If you stop doing that, if you take on this life of severe leisure, at the same time, there is a direct effect on the consciousness of that individual also becoming inactive, no longer becoming tested, no longer learning. The curiosity goes away. The mind actually physically calcifies itself. Not just the pineal gland, but through this lack of testing, okay? Through this lack of what I would say catalytic stress of life that happens through these motions and interaction and cause and effect. If that goes away, things become static. They become stagnant. They start to decay internally. Your thought patterns do not become strengthened. They become weaker because there's not enough for you to continue to test upon. You have not perfected yourself. You've actually, going through a choice of leisure or choosing to retire is actually de-perfecting. It's de-evolutive to the person. Your goal in life, I don't know where this whole idea of leisure came from. I've never studied the history of it. It's probably to blame the French in some accord if I would go back in my history. But this idea of leisure or this idea of retirement is actually killing us. That's
I
where we
don't
have the
doubt it.
most amount of end-of-life care. I mean, look at the communities in Florida, Mark, of retirees. Just go study that for a bit. And what do the people degrade to? And you've seen these communities, and I don't want to be too general about this, but massive amounts of STDs getting passed around. Because what
I've
happens
heard that.
in a life of
I
leisure?
heard that.
You become
Wow.
bored. So the only thing you're going to do in that time is, okay, my action is going to be with the action of someone of the opposite or same sex. That's the only thing I'm interested in. Now it goes to all these basal things rather than intellectual pressing stressors that need to be there, forcing you to continue to evolve. People go back to this initial seed state when life should continually blossom. And that does not happen when you choose that life of retirement. And it actually kills you internally, first with your thoughts and then with the body second.
Wow, thank you. Very important stuff.
Mark,
So,
I will
I mean-
work every single day until I drop dead. And I will
think-
not stop.
Okay, so the question is, do you think it's healthful for people? Like, will you always do the same kind of work? Like, you might get to a point when you're 80 that, maybe you're going to focus on taking care of your garden or something like that. Do you think that would be legitimate, or was that a cop-out?
No. Let me share something here, Mark.
Okay.
Who said this? Heraclitus, maybe? No man, or Democritus, either one. No man steps in the same river twice. You ever heard that saying?
No, but it's very interesting. I really find that fascinating.
The river's always moving. It's always in constant
Right.
change. Now,
Of course.
there's work that requires with my body to walk across the river.
Mhm.
Okay? I have to expend calories to go across.
Mhm.
Every time I journey across, it's never the same river and it's never the same journey. Even though the overall action seems, albeit repetitious, of just crossing rivers. It's actually completely different and unique every time I do it. So what you choose to do for work, Mark, is not really the thing of consequence here. What is of consequence here is actually the act of doing work. Because
Yeah, I
everything,
agree.
no matter how large, small, tending to a
I
garden
agree.
or cranking a wrench on an airplane, right?
Yeah.
Everything about life can be learned throughout the process of that work. Because what allows that work to be done are laws that are in place that allow that thing to exist. And by doing that work, the same laws apply, even though it's a different mode of work that is occurring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it says, and maybe we can look at that later, in the other book over there. What am I thinking of? Die Art zu leben.
The Art zu leben, the way to live. Yeah.
The way to live. Yeah. It says that striving leads to delectation, which is pleasure and delight.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really want happiness, you should be working
Right. You
on
got
a
to
regular basis.
work your
Even
ass
if-
off. Find
Yeah.
joy in the work.
So I've been trying to take more and more of my wife's work because I think she's working too much. She's stressing. So I'm trying to take more of her work.
Oh, man.
Anyway, that's the joy of married life.
Can we go over one
Hello?
more thing? Can you go back to the
Sure,
microphones?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, we kind of quit early there.
Oh, I'm not quitting nothing.
Continue. You want me to continue reading? Or
Yeah, you
what?
said there was a law in your passage, and I want you to reread it. I know what it is, but I want you to bring it back up.
The law of adaptation of all things to each other.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Stop. Pause. Halt.
Okay.
Mark, you and I exist in a world which,
Mhm.
in some very material or very immaterial form, you and I are interconnected.
Right.
And what I'm doing over here in New Mexico does in some way, shape, or form affect you over there in Ohio.
Oh, yes.
Okay? Now, like the words coming out of my mouth, which you are hearing in your ears right now, okay, at some sort of level,
Mhm.
you have to adapt to the interaction of our conversation. And there's
Okay.
nothing you can do about it. You have to adapt to it. And so life, the planet, weather, people, society, politics, war, we need to adapt to that. We need to adapt to our own thoughts as our thoughts are interacting with us. and interacting with others. We, through this inextricable law, forces an adaptation to occur through motion, cause and effect, and interaction of all these independent unities that come together to this bigger group. And so within this thing, we're all squeezed into this space. We have to adapt to these things that are slamming into us all the time. And it's completely impossible to pull yourself out of this mode of adaptation. It is there all the time. Your immune system is constantly adapting to surfaces you touch, things you eat, air you breathe, people you interact with. Everything at the biological, to the mental, to the emotional, to the spiritual level, all of those things are constantly in adaptation.
Yes, makes sense to me.
If it didn't make sense, Mark, it wouldn't be true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we talked about really important things here. What the human thinks he makes real.
Mm-hmm.
What he thinks about himself, he becomes. And then we went and we talked about going to seed, meaning if your retirement is without a plan and you're just lying around all day, you're going to degrade. And then we jumped to Might of Thoughts, or we jumped to Die Art zu Leben, striving leads to happiness. I'm just trying to summarize because we're covering a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of, when we were talking about in the book of Hebrews, that mountain reminded me of a little bit of, you know, how Jehovah is discussed in the Meier material, Jehovah and the Giza intelligences and all that.
There's only so many people that can go to heaven, Mark. It's like 230,000 or something with the Jehovah's Witnesses.
You sound like somebody. You sounded like Trump there for a moment.
Yeah.
Do you do a Trump imitation?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I could probably figure it out after a bit.
Okay. Yeah. That would be great. I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah, no problem.
So where was I here?
Die Art zu Leben, Giza Intelligences, Book of Hebrews, Mountain Ideas.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit. But
Jehovah.
We could talk about that. Jehovah. Because they said Jehovah was one of the Giza intelligences in the Meier material. You know that story about Billy going under the Great Pyramid?
Oh, it's wonderful. Absolutely
That's my
wonderful.
favorite. I mean, I could repeat that 1,000 times.
Please make it into a sci-fi film. Please,
yes, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
What about Alzheimer's? That's a growing problem today.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Yeah, calcification of the brain also.
Calcification of the brain.
Mm-hmm. You know what movement does? Movement lubricates the body. When the body does move and or exerts pressures, the blood pressure also increases, forcing blood to go up into the brain itself. Now, it's not just a function of the motion of the body, but the mind must also continually be in motion. And so what you find here is that when you go to, how do I connect this? If you're thinking all the time, you're adapting, all right? You're considering things. You're assiduous in your thoughts, if you were to put it that way. The more assiduous you are, the more experience you can build against that knowledge which you have crafted, and then you can have wisdom out of it, all right? If you repeat that process, it keeps that mind really fresh. Like Einstein, he had a great mind until the day he died. That's what you can look at the slivers of it in museums. No calcification, no nothing. That thing was plump.
Really?
Yeah. You can check it out.
You can see the calcification.
Oh, you can see calcification in brains all the time. You can just check it out inside the gray matter. You'll find it. So, Here's the thing. When you live in a state of belief, Mark, you really don't have to consider the world. You don't have to be assiduous in your thoughts. You don't have to test things because you are told, and you just assume that that is correct. Now, if you repeat over a very long period of time very strong beliefs, what do you think is going to happen inside the brain?
Probably calcification.
Precisely, because the thought patterns, the way the neurons fire are completely different. It's actually less of an activity level.
Let me ask you this. I had this discussion with my wife a little bit. Why is it that you can never remember the names of the people that don't interest you? I hate to say that.
Two things. There's two things here. It's not that, one, the people didn't interest you. It's one, you did not connect with them on a level beyond their name.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for saying
And two, here's the other aspect. You did not concentrate on the person's name during conversation. I've met a lot of people, Mark, that I would never want to interact with nor connect with on an emotional level, but I still remember their names.
That's really nice that you do that. There are two bodybuilders that I had the hardest time. One of them's named Brandon Curry, and he doesn't look like a Brandon. So I can never remember his name, even though he won the Mr. Olympia once. And you're right, there was something that I never connected with about him. And there's another guy, William Bonac, who is very successful as well. But so I'm trying to make it, I force myself to remember their names. I don't know if that's good or bad or.
It's fine. No, it's good. I mean, you're practicing concentration, right? 3 types of memory. What are they, Mark? Come on.
I had a long-term, short-term, and
ultra short-term.
Ultra short-term?
Ultra short-term memory, short-term and long-term memory.
Okay.
All of which you can access at any time in your life, Mark. Just depends on the level of concentration that you have. And you will forget nothing.
Say that again. How do you know you'll forget nothing if you do what?
If you just learn to concentrate.
Learning to concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the hypnosis, no.
You don't have to hypnotize yourself to learn to concentrate.
Okay.
It's about maintaining a soft focus, right? You can practice it with a candle, and then with that, you can align your thoughts at the same time to practicing on the focus of the candle. Aside from the other biological effects that happen with melatonin and serotonin, through viewing a candle in a dark space towards evening, what you're doing is you're training yourself to still the mind, to focus on one specific thing, or focus on an access point of information which you have. And if you can learn to do that, you can amass any information that you have read before. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just the fact that you've become lazy with your concentration. It's just poor concentration.
So the synapses in your brain are still there for that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you don't know where it's at exactly. You kind of lost it. It's a book that's lost or something.
Yeah,
like
or
that.
Other connections that are loose, nonlinear connections that could bring you back to an old thought. You're not very good at thinking like that anymore. You've lost the concentration, the ability to backtrack the patterns or go find that thing through the files. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. 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 That's fascinating. So is this a big problem in society right now?
Massive.
How is it?
Massive. People are so poor at concentrating. Horrific at it. You know how many people walk around, they share all the time, they're like, oh, I wish I could meditate. There's so many thoughts that go through my head, and because of that, I can't meditate. Well, first of all, the only thing you concentrate well on is saying, I can't. That's the very first thing you're very good at concentrating on. All right? Yeah. So if you take that and retune it 180 degrees and say, you know what? I can concentrate. And I'm going to concentrate on stilling all the bullshit and noise that's going on in my head, and I'm going to slow it down. And through that slowing, I'm going to create a nice little wave, a pattern, which I can live within, essentially a flow within myself. And then when I want to access something, no other noise gets in the way. I can deliberately focus on the specific thing I want to give attention to. And I can either recall it or interact with it if it lives outside of me. But many people all over the place are very, very poor at concentrating.
You're calling this just general concentration.
General concentration.
Rather than its other term. It's known by another term, right?
Are you going with meditation?
We could call it meditation if we wanted to, right?
You could. Now,
let me ask you this. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you can meditate with your eyes open or closed.
Yep.
Okay. And if you're meditating with your eyes closed, you're focusing on an image that's in your mind.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Whereas if you're with your eyes open meditating, you're focused on something, right? Like a candle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both legitimate. Maybe one's better.
Absolutely. Okay. No, Mark, please. It is not that one thing is better than the other. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's just a different type of thing. Remember we talked about work before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
That's all it is. And for some people, it works best to focus on an object. a glass sphere, a candle, lines on paper, or just shutting your eyes and finding a point within, your mind's eye and just focusing on that one specific thing. But in the instance of what it means to be a human being and us interacting with things outside of us, it's typically helpful to use some sort of object which we can impart our focus upon. Because if I told you, Mark, hey, Mark, close your eyes, you see nothing, it's totally black, choose a point in space and focus on it. You'd be like, are you shitting me, Alexander? There are no points. It's pitch black in here. I can't see anything.
I can imagine the sun, though.
Yes, you can imagine the sun. See, now, Mark, that's a function of concentration. You have pulled up from the root, the tree of your mind, this image of the sun, and you have put it in the blackness of your eyes being closed, and something is occurring. There is a light. There's an impulse of this image that occurs, and you can focus on that because you know it. You've concentrated on it. It's a very intimate piece of knowledge to you. That is a skill set, Mark, and you can do that with many, many different things, but it's fantastic that you choose to do it with the sun.
Interesting. Continue. You have a comment building.
Yeah, here's my comment.
Okay.
That which you're doing is a wonderful practice and can lead you to become a very good meditator. It takes many, many years to round out and figure out and perfect, if you can even get to the point of perfection. But that level of focus, Mark, for you, you do it with your eyes closed, and others, they can find that level of concentration with something external. And I think it's wonderful that you have the ability to do that. And go ahead.
Sometimes I think of sleep as a form of concentration.
Sleep?
Yeah, that sounds a little nuts, but you usually have to kind of focus on something. Still your mind before you go to sleep, because if your mind is racing, which is the antithesis of meditation, you can't sleep.
No. There's almost meditation is a consolidation. It's a consolidation of those thought energies through the concentration and efforts of yourself, using the force of your spirit and that energy through the subconscious and the consciousness to impart wonderful focus and peace. Now, sleep, when you dip out into that subconscious state, it is tremendously helpful to slow things down before that occurs. Because if you don't do that, it's very hard to digest everything that has happened throughout the day. So find that. Find the energy when you're laying in bed to concentrate on one specific thing until you just pass the hell out and then work through that. But there's an interesting instance that happens here. If you study the brainwave patterns of human beings, okay, in concentration, and then those that in concentration from meditation, and then those that are going to bed, you can actually carry the benefits of meditation through the sleep state if you choose to meditate directly before sleeping. Sleeping actually prolongs the meditation. So let me share something cool. If you can only handle 15 minutes of meditation, but you go to sleep immediately after, the subconscious is going to keep doing its work. So you're actually going to get longer, prolonged periods of time of meditating, and you're not even going to realize it. And so you get those benefits.
I believe that's huge. Well said. That is so true. I've had some very interesting experiences meditating, and I'm going to put myself down and I'm going to become what I think.
You said it, I didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not going to put myself down, but yeah, I should be meditating. This is a good reminder. Maybe this is one thing you should, like every other show or every show, just harp on it. I'm a strong believer in repetition. So
repetition is the mother of all learning, Mark, and I am not here to teach you anything new. I'm only here to remind you of what you already know deep down.
That's what you always say. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes until the break. We could talk about 251 a little bit, Contact 251, or we could start talking about, if you want to talk about the Watchers and the Giants and all the stuff from the Fallen Morado. I don't know if you looked at that this week.
I did look at it this week, but I also brought
something else.
I have personal notebooks like this, which I consolidate, no pun intended, I consolidate much information in from many different pieces of works, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And in here, I always find things that I really, really enjoy. Things that I've found that I've read even through the Meier material that I think is super, super cool. Not all of the thoughts in here are completely novel that I have come up with, but I got a good one for you here. So can I share it?
Sure.
It has to deal with attention. Like we were talking about just this idea of focus. All right, concentration.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It says the lack of attention and the uncertainty we often feel towards the supreme creative force, and our failure to understand how this great creative spirit can be used to help us express more love and consideration towards our fellow human beings is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We do not, and then we can close out after this, but I like sharing this. We do not spend enough time learning about the laws that allow us to exist, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the work of the Meier material deals with defining something and then giving repetitious examples and explanations over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't give everything away because it requires you to go do the work, to go test these things, to go find out the rest of the elements that are in place.
Right.
And so for us, if we really want to learn the power of what's internally within us, with our spirit that enlivens our body, allows us to exist, okay, in its creative force, we can unlock incredible amounts of not only understanding, but technology and love amongst ourselves as human beings. And this is something we don't do very well. We don't really take the time to understand what is allowing us to be here. And then putting enough weight into that when we really, really think about it, and then carry that back into all of our thoughts and everything that we do. We all need to take a big halt and say, okay, one, what is valuable to me? Why is it valuable to me?
Oh, that's so important. What you're saying now is so important.
Okay. What is valuable? Go ahead, Mark, please.
We do a lot of stuff that we really don't think is valuable to ourselves. If we were honest, we would stop doing that or decrease doing that or whatever.
Correct. And a good barometer, a good way to sift through things that are of value is to find out what allows you to exist. To look at that thing, really question and ponder and test it. And then in doing so, you have this awesome gold panner, and you can go through and you can only pull out gold all day long because you know exactly the things of value of which to look for amongst all this other noise and things that are occurring. Because you have found out that those value systems are based upon the things that allow your existence to occur, which is a tremendously valuable thing. And if we can see that, if we pay attention to it, we remove the uncertainty from ourselves. We find that understanding, and we grow in great resonance and power internally within our body.
So you're talking about finding out what allows us to exist?
Precisely.
Well, could you elaborate on that? I mean,
sure.
Like creation?
Yeah, you talked about the law of adaptation, didn't you, before? And there's other laws. Cause and effect, oneness, free will, distortion, opposites, contrariness, the inner, the outer, elimination, nourishment.
This is an example of the law of adaptation. I noticed last year in my garden, the cucumbers plants, they grew towards those tomato stands, and they literally wrapped this little itself around the tomato stands and grew up the tomato stand. And I had these huge, long cucumbers. It almost sounds like it has some kind of innate intelligence, which is...
Well, you know what the intelligence is? The cucumber knows how to live within its own laws, not the fact that it thinks, okay? But at a cellular level, these things are regulated. As Billy likes to say, brazen regulation. And all this thing wants to do is survive. And in order to do so, it must adapt to its environment. And then it must perfect itself. And the fruit of its growth, Mark, is the cucumber itself. It finds its perfection over and over, season after season. And you can see these things if we just, again, pay attention to it. But that is something that should remove the uncertainty that people have in their own lives. What a cucumber can tell you about yourself is actually remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It's astounding. Yeah, I watched these cucumbers and they grew on the ground, and then they make it to the tomato stand, and then they grow up the tomato stand, and when they get high enough up there, you'll start to see the cucumber start to grow, and it was really astonishing. And they seem like they're thinking, but they're not really. They're not really thinking.
They're not thinking at all.
Is there something programmed into them from creation itself?
Absolutely. They have a limit. They have a genetic limit, right? The cucumber has its own genetics. It's completely pre-programmed.
Whoa.
Everything.
Why have you heard all these people talk about we're living in a simulation?
Gosh, that stuff is just, I can't. It's so ridiculous. I can't.
What are they actually saying?
I don't know, but it sounds like a freaking cop-out. Here's the thing. They haven't taken the time to really think about all of these aspects of life. So they come up with this idea of a paradox, which they are living in. Life is not real. We are in a simulation. It is just a program. And when you do that, you strip away the meaning of life itself. You strip away the value of the preservation and reverence for life when you say it's just a computer program. Somebody else is testing it. Well, guess what? You still have this stupid idea that there's some higher supreme being that wrote this code. Isn't
the creation itself writing some of this? I mean, isn't the
our universe has a form to it, Mark?
It has a consciousness, right?
Yes, it's called creation. Yeah, universal creational consciousness. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has an idea, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Where did this idea come from?
Well, that's a good question.
Out of nothing.
That's hard for people to understand.
Correct. And so to say that there is a matrix which we live in, some sort of program, right? Some sort of computer element to our life, is this crazy absurdity that this material idea is the thing that defines the most immaterial greatest power that surrounds us. It doesn't align. It doesn't make sense. It does not respect the life. And it certainly does not consider first principle thinkings of how forms beget other forms.
So just to warn you again, we got 5 minutes left in this hour. We'll go on a 5-minute break, and then we have the second hour.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on the hook for second hour.
So yeah, that's fine. I'm chilling. Having a great day.
Good. Yeah, I don't know what this simulation stuff everyone's talking about, but you're saying it's pretty bogus.
Oh, it's completely bogus. What a cop-out. How can you be respecting of life? How can you respect other people if you think it's a simulation? You walk around and they call people these things called NPCs, non-playing characters. It comes from the video game industry. So what? You don't think there's value in that other human being's life? They're just an NPC? You're okay if they get shot or die or become ill in the street? You won't lend a helping hand because you just think there's some robotic program? It's a horrible, horrible way to view the world. It's absolutely twisted.
When we get back, I want to talk about law a little bit.
Oh, I would love to.
Because there's some things about our laws that seem very strange to me.
Oh, let's do that, Mark. I'm all about it.
Yeah. Because I got some scenarios that I want to run past you and see if you can. I don't know if you know what the Meier material says about it, but anyway, so we don't live in a simulation. I guess we established this.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
I don't know. I've never had the feeling that we lived in a simulation, so I don't get what they're talking about.
Mark, you don't need to have the feeling. You don't even need to get it. It's lame. It's lame and illogical. Don't worry about it.
Well, since we got 3 minutes, I'll start in on law and then we can pick back up.
Sure.
After the break. But I told you a long time ago, I probably told you about this. I can never know for sure that far back. Oh, damn. Well, we'll talk about it after the
Maybe next time, Mark. Thanks.